Welcome back to the channel, Diablo gamers. It's me again, Concept Gaming, here with another video. And yes, it's been a while, but I'm back. Today's video is all about discussing the Cyclone Havoc version 2. Because in my previous video, which was this video, I wasn't able to get one certain essence to complete the build. But today, I've finally completed all the essences for this build. And there's also one more thing that I want to share, and that is creating the build. So there are certain criteria that I have to follow to make the build work for my class. Number one is legendary gem utilization. So what this means is whatever legendary gems that I have, I should carry it over with the new class that I'm playing, and I should maximize all the legendary gems. And one of the example of this gem, which I'm really a big fan of, is the Pain class. And right now, that is the highest rank 2-star gem that I have, and it's rank 8. And it gives me 20% damage increase when it procs. Basically, I need to have a continuous damage on all the time to get that extra 20% damage increase. That is just one example of gem utilization that I have to do to make this build work. Number 2, continuity of attacks. In the beginning, I would always choose a skill with the highest damage output possible. But I have noticed that it's better to choose attacks that connect or link to each other and even offset each other while you are constantly moving from one mob to another. Number 3, cooldown or charges. So choosing also a skill, you have to consider the cooldown or the charges that this skill has. So choosing a skill where you can decrease the cooldown is also important, or choosing a skill where the cooldown is already less can help you with that continuity of attacks. Number 4 is the build must complement secondary gears. Examples of the secondary gears are your V2s, Shalbas, Gloom Guides, Seeds of Zone, etc. So the build that you have to make must complement with either of those sets that I mentioned to enhance further your character's gameplay. So that also is one thing that you have to consider. And the 5th criteria, you should have at least one dash or mobility skill in your disposal for your build to help you move faster from one mob to the next. Alright, so the next part is why I chose this continuous damage build. To answer that question, it's easy because in any class that I play, I like to use an AoE skill. I like to use area damage in my farming and even in my dungeon. Why? Because it's just so easy to hit all the mobs at the same time instead of like hitting the mobs by section. Alright? And I'm sorry to say that if I compare this to my Barb, the AoE of my Barb, the Sundered Legacy, is nowhere near the AoE of this Blood Knight. It's like times 2 or times 3 radius. So I feel so bad that the Barb is not getting that radius reach for the Sundered Legacy. So what happens is, if I'm a Barb and I activate my Wrath of the Berserker and there's a cluster of mob, when I go in the middle of the mob, I get 80 to 70% coverage to hit the mob with that continuous damage. Whereas in the Blood Knight, I always get that 100% coverage for that continuous damage. So can you imagine like having that continuous damage and getting that 20% increased damage when you hit them with your bleed or burn effect? So for me, the Blood Knight wins in the AoE damage skill compared to the Barbarian. For you guys to compare the build, you need to see also the stats that I have. So right now, the Paragon level is 884. My resonance now is 1,800. For my damage, I'm at 14,088. For my life, I'm at 181,000. For my combat rating, I'm at 21,053. The reason is that I started late with Diablo Immortal and I couldn't get that health query boost of combat rating. And also my gear ranks are not that high, but I'm slowly getting there. For my critical hit chance, I have 14%, and for my critical hit damage, I have 40%. My attack speed is at 10.5%, and I also have a 10% movement speed. Alright, so moving on with the essence build for the Cyclone Havoc build. So for my headpiece, I went with Horn of Hex, because Siphon is no longer channeled and now moves with you, dealing damage and draining the life of nearby enemies. And one thing that you have to know, if you're using this headpiece, the Grace of the Flagellant will not work, because now it's mentioned it is no longer channeled, but you can bring it with you if you are moving from one mob to another. For the chest piece, I went with Chiropterian Trade, because I want that 19% boost in my Swarm of Bats damage. For my shoulder piece, I went with Swarm Speaker, because now the Swarm of Bats engulfs you in a cloud of bat, continually damaging to nearby enemies, and the Swarm of Bats damage is increased by 18%. So this is the second AoE skill that I have. The first one was the headpiece, which is the Siphon of Blood. Alright, so for the pants, I went with Faces of Fading Mirth, because now Swarm of Bats has that poison effect, which procs my Pain Clasp. Now if you activate your Swarm of Bats, the total time that you can activate and use the Swarm of Bats is about 6 seconds. And so while the Swarm of Bats is in cooldown, I have to activate another skill to activate my Pain Clasp, so that I have continuous activation of my Pain Clasp. So how did I did that? I'll explain it later in the succeeding essences. So next, main hand, I went with the Bill Salver, because for me, this is considered also my dash or mobility skill, that I can freely move from one mob to another. And also this one will activate my Bottled Hope and also my Vithus. The thing I like about the Bill Salver is, aside from the mobility, it also gives me a good high amount of damage plus crowd control with the stun. So my first offhand weapon is Hanging Chalice. After Shadow's Edge hits an enemy, 2 blades ricochet out randomly, targeting nearby enemies with X amount of damage. So with this, you are covering the sides of the mob, and your Siphon and Swarm of Bats will cover the AoE. So this will really work hand in hand with your other essences. So for my second main hand, I went with Red Concord. This will now complete my continuous activation for my Pain class, because now it modifies my Whirling Strike with Burn effect, equals to continual damage, which activates my Pain class. For the Whirling Strike, you have 2 charges. These 2 charges can cover the lost time of the Swarm of Bats while it is still in cooldown. So can you imagine, after your Swarm of Bats now expires, you then go to another mob and then use your Whirling Strike with the Siphon, and now you will get that proc from your Pain class, and then go to another mob and then do your second charge for your Whirling Strike, and then that time already your Swarm of Bats is now ready to be activated. Alright, for my second offhand weapon, I went with Sprig of Hawthorn. Skewer also increases your damage done by 19% for 4 seconds. So this is really gonna complete the Cyclone Havoc build, which you can see right now in the screen. So guys, what do you think about the Cyclone Havoc build now with the completed essences and its continuous damage? If you have any comments, please leave them down below. And if you like the content that I'm sharing, please hit the like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon to be notified. It really helps YouTube know that my videos are worth your time and worth sharing. Have a good day. Bye!